Okay, hello again. We are moving on. I think I'm going to try to cover a little bit of this in class, but we'll see how it goes. But basically, to start this out, the Constitutional Convention was set up, Philadelphia, to revise, keep that word in mind, revise, kind of tweak it a little bit, the Constitution. So every state, 12 states of the 13 sent people, big names. On your outline, you should have those names like Franklin and Madison and Alexander Hamilton and whoever else is on there, I forget. But George Mason, who I'll tell you about that in class a little bit, those guys. But it's kind of like your all-star team is there. So you can kind of see that it's not just necessarily going to be revising. So what ends up happening is they elect an executive, or a presiding officer, a president of the convention. So they choose George Washington. Okay, now, why George Washington? He's well known, obviously. He's not the smartest guy in the room. He's not an idiot, but he's not like a genius. Think about when you're in a group and the smartest person tries to take over, or they can't really relate. That becomes a problem. Plus, he wasn't highly ideological. Think about not real liberal, not real conservative. He just wanted to do what was best and get something done. So they elect him because he's this respected figure and so on. So they start talking about revision, like, well, here are the problems, and boom, 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 boom. And they realize very quickly, and they've really realized this before, but you can't really revise something that's broken. So they decide to scrap it and come up with a brand new document. Okay? So the first thing Washington does, and I'm sort of taking a little liberty here, is anybody have any ideas? Anybody have any ideas? Because of the teeth. And Virginia, a guy named Edmund Randolph. You ever heard this name? Don't worry about him for the test. Madison really is the one that came up with this, but Madison's like this little bitty. We'll talk about him. He's like 5'3", 5'2". Had a voice, kind of like this quiet voice, and very bad, just not a good speaker and all that. So Randolph is kind of like, I don't know. Think of the frattiest frat guy and that's probably pretty much him. Very self-assured and, hello, I speak to you today about Virginia. So anyway, he gets up and he introduces this idea. We have an idea for a new government called the Virginia Plan. And I'm only going to give you three things. I'm going to kind of go quickly through this. Number one, it called for a strong national legislature. So, the articles they had a legislature, but it was like, pretty please, will you please obey these laws? So, no, but this was stronger legislature. Okay. Secondly, there was a president, an executive created, but they wouldn't be as strong as the legislature. So picture like, here's the president, and here's the legislature all surrounding him. Like, you can't just do whatever you want, because you don't want anybody taking over as a king, which, is what we fought to get rid of, obviously. So the executive would be surrounded by the legislature, if you will. And then thirdly, representation, the way they determine how many people were in the legislature from each state, Virginia, New Hampshire, etc., were two things. Number one, by population, and number two, by the amount of money given to the government. Okay, there's no tax back then. So the amount of money given to the government and population. Well, guess what? It just so happened that Virginia was the wealthiest and the most populous state. So obviously, it was going to help them. Which, duh. You get a chance to make rules, you tend to make rules to help yourself. I think you'd agree with that. So you've got four big states at the time. You've got Virginia, you've got New York, you talking to me, Massachusetts, and Pennsylvania. Okay, so those four states hearing this, and they're like, testify, brother. This is great. But the other states, New Hampshire and Delaware and these little bitty Rhode Islands and all that, and Georgia, which wasn't a small state, but population-wise and power-wise it was. They hated it because they saw that they weren't going to get, as many votes, and Virginia, etc., were going to run things more or less. So they're like, nope, I'm not going to do that. So they, according to legend, we'll see, I don't know if this is true, but these guys got together in the middle of the night, one night, in a church. And this guy, William Patterson, who's like this, I don't know, sort of a short, chubby, sweaty guy, that kind of one of those guys. And he addresses these guys, gentlemen, we must not let this weak states take advantage of us. If we stick together, we should be able to do what we want. Because it took 9 votes to pass anything, 2/3, rather, or 3/4, 2/3. Anyway, so if they stuck together, they could get their way. So they come up with this alternative plan known as the New Jersey Plan, cleverly enough. And it is more of a revision of the Articles, where you've got, I'll give you 3 points here as well. You have a national legislature that's stronger than in the Articles, but not as strong as in the Virginia Plan. Number 2, they would have created a plural executive. I think it was 3. Now, what's the problem there? Think about putting 3. Okay, think about Clinton. No, let's just do the last 3. Think about Biden and Obama and Trump all trying to be president at the same time. I don't even want to imagine what it would be like. But obviously, you would have problems because everybody wants to be the top guy and so on and so forth. And then thirdly, the legislature would have been 1 vote per state. And you can see the small states would be like, yeah, that's good. Because then Rhode Island is the same power as Virginia. And just as predictably, Virginia and Pennsylvania, big states, hated it. And what ended up happening was they got mad. These guys are used to getting their way. They're used to being the boss. They're used to being in charge. They're used to being top dog, if you will. So, and all this stuff is, well, most of this stuff I'm going to tell you is true. So they're in there. They're arguing about what to do here, and nobody wants to give in because they think they're right. And Philadelphia's hit by a heat wave. Okay. So picture 90 some degrees, high humidity. Washington, some of you probably know this, had ordered that the doors and windows stay shut for secrecy's sake, so nobody could spy. So you got that. Air conditioner's not working. You got a wig on your head. You're ticked off, and you're wearing wool pants. I mean, that is not a good combination. So they're starting to get chippy, and they're yelling and screaming and everything else. And finally, George Washington, one of probably the smartest things he's ever done, whenever he talked, gentlemen, we need to take a break. And so they do. And they disperse to their apartments or homes or whatever it is they do. And it gives them time to get away from the situation. And that's where we'll pick up in class. Okay, so just know these 2 plans, the basic differences, and what it ends up leading to this conflict that we'll solve in class. All right, bye.